This is Curtis Dean, and we're on Coursen's Corner.
Hey, buddy.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Dude, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Sorry it took us so long to get this scheduled. I know it's we've been bouncing back and forth
At the gym.
at the gym, at Soho, trying to get everything coordinated.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really enjoy about doing this podcast is you get to see different sides of people. You get to learn more about them. We all sometimes, or at least I especially, have this tendency to just kind of we kind of surface evaluate people, right? It's like, oh, who's that guy? Oh, he's a t-shirt guy, right? Or he's got a clothing brand. This guy, he's a security guy, or he's a SEAL, or he's a Ranger, he's a whatever. And have been working to get you on the show, and was shooting the shit with Brad one day, who's also a Ranger. And he was like, oh yeah, he's my life coach. I was like, what? He was like, yeah, that's like what he does. I was like, oh, I thought he was like a t-shirt guy. He's like, no, that's like his side hustle. I was like, oh, fascinating. So when we got to sit down and drop in, that was a really nice way to get to see the totality of what makes Curtis Curtis.
Yeah.
Versus
absolutely.
just the
versus just the clothing guy.
Right. Because I think how we occur to different people is always a unique thing, right?
Yeah, I had a friend at Soho I met there too. When I he's like this fashion guy, and he's like a designer himself, but like designs restaurants and bars.
Mhm.
And then he saw me post about other stuff. I was like, wait a second, like I'm more interested in that, not the fashion. That piques me.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I do expert witness work for like different law firms, and there's this I don't know if it's a misconception, because it does hold true with a lot of different people, but like the mouth breathing knuckle draggers like aren't good writers.
Mm-hmm.
And when they say, well, I want you to get me your report in so like I can go through it and red mark it and take out, I'm like, oh no, I'm probably a better writer than you are. Like I wrote a book, like I fancy myself a writer.
Right. Don't let the appearance fool you.
But we were talking yesterday, and you brought something up, and I was like, don't say anything more about it. Save it for the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't meet your dad until you were 35 years old.
I still haven't. I don't know who I've never spoken to him.
Oh, this story's getting even more
Yeah, so I've never
just
actually
start at the beginning.
Yeah. So during COVID, I was having a chat with my mom, and I was like, I'm really gonna take a DNA test, because I want to know like my DNA. Like I'm really attracted to like this type of like woman, this ethnicity. Like my grandma's full Mexican, Spanish, and I was like, I'm just gonna take this test.
What did you grow up thinking you were, like genetically, like Irish Italian?
Well, I thought it was like Irish and Mexican, Irish and Spanish. Like, because my grandma's like a full blown, like born on the border of El Paso in Mexico, raised by nuns.
Okay, really?
Her grandfather was the governor of Chihuahua and Jalisco in the late 1800s.
Wow.
They fled Mexico, came to Texas on the border, early 1900s. So I knew I had that in me. And then I was, raised by a man who's got red curly hair and bright blue eyes and fair skin.
Just like you.
Yeah, just like me. So she's like, so I tell her I'm going to take this test. She's like, well, before you take this test, I need to share something with you. And she's like, who you think your father is might not be your father. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm listening.
Did she say it like might not? Like
she said it might not, because her guilt and her shame was coming up, right? And she's like, this is 35 years sitting inside you. I couldn't imagine of holding that in for 35 years of what it's like for her.
Right.
And so my background's already in human behavior and understanding. And I'm like, okay, this kind of makes sense. So I'm not going off the walls here. This is going to answer some questions for me. And so I was like, okay, great. I'm going to order 23andMe and order Ancestry. So I go on Amazon, order them. They both show up, take both the tests, drop them in. So her and I are having this dialogue as it goes along. And I have a good friend of mine whose wife was actually adopted, and she didn't know who her parents were. So she was kind of giving me some feedback on her situation was like for her. And in the meantime, I'm talking to my mom. My grandma's still alive at this point. And she's like, mijo, whatever you do, just do not tell your father. Because she like already knew. But she was just like, no. And so the 23andMe comes back. And the first indicator was there was 0 Irish in my blood for 2 generations. And I'm like, oh, well, this is like, there's no way. And I'm like, so this is starting to make sense of like how I grew up, thinking like, man, am I the fucking mailman's kid? Because I don't look like anyone in this family. But when you're that young, like, why would you question who your parents are? Like, it's just like, these are your parents. This is who you're born. Like, this is it. And then Ancestry came in about 3 weeks later. And I woke up and it was like, I'd been waking up around like 5:30, got the email and saw this name. Like my mom took the test, so it was on there.
Okay.
My grandma, my aunt, they've all taken Ancestry. And then I see this person's name and I'm like, oh, that's the biological father.
And this is through a familial DNA.
Through familial DNA, because he happened to take it.
Wow.
So then I call my mom, and this is where it gets even a little bit more tricky and a little bit more out there. So she at the time was living with the father who raised me.
Right.
She was like 21, 20 years old, because she had me when she was 21. She's about 20.
Okay.
And she had been sleeping with some other guy.
Like having an affair.
Okay. Outside their, relationship. And he had a twin brother. Now, she thought it was, when I showed her the name, she's like, well, that's weird because I was with the other brother, but she had slept with the other twin one night, and that's when I came about.
Wow.
So only one of the twins have taken the test, but they're not paternal.
Right.
So she didn't even realize it was that one. She thought it was another one. So the whole time she thought it was some other guy, and it was this guy because she was having a little fun and slept with the other twin brother.
I don't know if you write screenplays, but like the Hallmark Channel or Bravo or somebody would kill for this story.
I don't know if that was, we need to make that one like
the Are You My Dad series.
Right. That's like Jerry Springer.
So I have so many questions.
Yeah.
The first is, what do you do next? Like, do you try to reach out to him?
So what happened next was, the first thing was I just had this biological wholeness come inside me.
Okay.
Like this piece biologically that, fuck, my life makes sense now.
Right.
Like I've been on this quest to like know who I am at this deepest core level. Like, why was I so interested in psychology? Why was I so interested in sociology and interpersonal communication, human behavior? I'm like, shit, I'm wanting to know who I am deep down. And this work has led me to open that door.
That's so fast.
To finally get there.
So in your innate sense of self, you felt like there was this like jigsaw puzzle that was missing a piece.
Yes.
And it was that one piece that would kind of just tie the whole story together.
Yes. And it just had this sense of like, I could relax.
Yeah, because I would think that could go one of two ways, right? It could go, oh, okay, this all makes sense now. Or it could go, all of the pillars that you were using to support your life were like kind of now just like crumbling.
Right.
But I'm glad it went the
fortunately I had done so much personal development up to that point. Right. And even my mentors like, listen, this is going to make, when you get this answer, things are going to make sense for you.
Was there any, I don't want to use the term like red flags, but were there any like indicators as you were growing up that you were like, oh, I'm not like that? Or, because like my sisters and I all have like certain mannerisms, right? That we get either from the maternal line or the paternal line. I'll even like do certain things that will remind my mom of like some of my uncles or things along those lines. But at no point am I ever acting like my brother-in-law.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you were growing up, did you ever have any of those? Oh, like do you have siblings?
I have two half brothers.
Two half brothers.
Yeah, so we have the same mom, different dad.
Okay.
Yeah.
But are they the children of the dad that you grew up thinking was your dad?
No.
Or someone else?
Someone else.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I guess the question
I'd say, yeah. So the question is like creativity.
Okay.
I was very like creative as a kid. And obviously that's come out later in life too. Mm-hmm. So like that aspect wasn't really like, my dad who raised me is all jocks, sports. So I was in baseball and soccer at a very young age. Like my dad liked baseball. He put me in baseball. I liked it. Right. But there was an aspect of like this creativity in me of like, I remember like just being like drawing and coloring and painting. Like my art was in like this art shows of like the entire county when I was like a kid.
Really?
So like that aspect of like, oh, where does this creative piece come from? Because I don't see it in the rest of the family. Like I don't see it in here. I don't see it here.
Right.
So like where
does that come from?
Where does that come from?
Right. Yeah, you see someone who's like a musical prodigy and they're like, oh, well, their grandmother was like a world-class pianist or athletes, you see it with that. But creativity, I think, is sort of along those same traits where if it's not generation to generation. It may like skip a generation, but somewhere in the family line, you can be like, oh, okay, they're just like their grandfather. Oh, they're just like their grandmother.
Yeah.
They're just like their dad or whoever. But did you feel that because no one in your family kind of shared that creative spark, that your creativity wasn't fostered as well as it could have been?
Yes, but here's how it came out. Because it wasn't fostered in the sense of like painting and drawing, right? Of me becoming a painter or like a typical, what you would see an artist, the way I used to express it was through clothing.
Interesting.
So I got really into like, well, if this part of me is, I'm like, you know, as a kid, like trying to express it, but like, is it okay? Right. So you're fawning, people pleasing in order to get, you know, the attention and love from your parents. So the way I dove into the creativity was like through my clothing, through my fashion. Like that was my safe spot to really express everything and to gain attention and to like gain notoriety, because I just started to develop a keen eye for like clothing. So I can remember being like Nordstrom's at 5 years old. Like I couldn't wait to go buy clothes for back to school.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That was like my least favorite thing to do when I was like growing up and going to school. What were some of those early influences into, like, do you remember when that like that pivot point or when that catalyst was when you first saw fashion as a creative outlet?
My mom and grandma got me into like photo shoots and stuff when I was like a little kid, like 4 or 5, like, and then
like Sears photo shoots, like,
well, just
we're
like
gonna sit you on the couch
stuff.
And like we're gonna drop the things behind you.
No, like
actual,
actually
like,
some like, you know, like modeling stuff and things like that.
For commercial.
Right. And I was like styled, like I look back at photos like, yeah, this is fresh. Yeah. I remember being like there's a moment in 3rd grade, and this is a big moment where today's the day I'm going to go to school, and this girl, Megan, is going to pick out between 3 guys when I'm in 3rd grade, which guy she wants to be her boyfriend. And I walked to the school.
Like in real life?
In real life. This is real life, right? And I'm at the bus station waiting for the bus to come. And I was like, no, I don't like my outfit today. Run home. Throw on a whole new outfit. I was like, this looks good. Come back, jump on a bus. It's, you know, the recess break, and it's the 3 guys, and she picks another guy. And I'm like, oh, fuck.
Should have worn the other outfit.
Right. And I was like, oh, maybe it's not just about the clothes. But that was a moment I remember of like, hey, like this guy, like my little guy in this moment is like trying to present himself the best with his fashion, his clothes, and like, this is it.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess the 3rd grade girl is like, who's going to win kickball? Right.
For her, I think she picked the smarter guy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the intellectual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny how the mating ritual evolves over time, right? From like who looks good standing next to me to who can protect me to who can provide to who can. It's a interesting.
It is how it evolves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had that initial like creative aspiration. When did the human design element start to find its way into your world?
High school.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember I was working at a really cool like snowboard shop where I'd like wax snowboards, sell snowboards and stuff.
Where'd you grow up?
And I grew up in Southern California. Okay. So just
a lot of snowboards in Southern California?
Yeah. I grew up like where I went to high school was 45 minutes from the beach and 45 minutes from the ocean. So we go surf in the morning, snowboard at night.
Oh, nice.
So we had a little best of both worlds. Yeah. I was at the mall one day and like on a date with this girl, and we went to the bookstore, and we're just like searching for books, and I found this book on like Zen Buddhism. Picked up this book and I was like, started reading. I was like, oh, this is cool. So I bought this book, and then later that year, I took psychology, and I was like, man, I like this class. Like I show up, I'm engaged, like I'm in it, and I'm like, I'm really loving this class. And I was like, this is okay, cool. And then in college, I was taking like sociology and interpersonal communication and philosophy and psychology. And I was like, I'm actually showing up to class. Like I was so sick. The teacher's like, you're white. You need to go home. And 45 minutes later, I was in an emergency room, but I showed up to take the test.
Oh, geez.
And like, I was like, there must be something here that I really, really enjoy. So that was kind of
what was wrong with you?
I had lobster poisoning.
Oh. That doesn't sound fun.
Yeah, no, it was terrible.
Is that like food poisoning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically seafood poisoning.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I've had seafood poisoning once.
It was terrible.
It was awful.
Yeah.
I was in Jordan. No.
Oh.
It was in India. Yeah. Not
rough.
Good.
Yeah. So that was like the starting point of like, there might be something here. And my grandma would like give me books to read when I was like 18, 19, like read these books. And it was like on personal development. She like gave me The Secret at 18 and like the Celestine Prophecy and like books on Buddhism.
I just realized I've been pronouncing that word wrong my entire life. Celestine Prophecy. I've always called it the Celestine Prophecy.
It might be Celestine.
No, I think your way's better. The Celestine sounds more appropriate.
So kind of that journey started of really like, I'm really into this. I just don't know what to do with it.
Did you get into any of like the Tony Robbins or like
I didn't get
like
into
the self-help?
Yeah, we got into like Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, Tony Robbins.
Dynetics.
Yeah, that was like floating out there. Never really dove into too much Tony stuff, but like these just
I'm trying to think if Tony was big back then.
Oh, he was definitely big.
Was he?
Yeah.
See, because that would have been... Well, you're graduating high school?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're talking 2008, 2009.
Oh, yeah. Definitely been.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little bit older than you.
Yeah.
My Prism's a little skewed.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, he was huge back then.
So that was really the journey of like, it started when I was younger and it just kind of just built like momentum slow by bit.
And then how did that turn into a practice for you?
I was living in LA. And I was like, all right, I'm in LA. Like I tried to do the whole acting thing for 7 years.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, this is a creative outlet. When I was in junior high, I had like the lead part in a play. I love watching them on stage. Like they're so free on stage. There's this piece about just being free and express yourself. And so I was like, well, maybe if I'm an actor, everyone else will love me and I'll learn how to love myself.
Yes.
And that was my idea. I was like, cool. Like I'll go and do this. I'm a dedicated guy. And I'll learn how to love myself because everyone else is going to love me.
Well, that's why people become actors.
Right.
Like and it's an entire industry of people who are not comfortable being themselves. So they get to pretend to be other people and they get awarded for it.
Right.
When they do it well.
Right. And you end up still hollow no matter how much fame and success you had. So
predicated on rejection.
Right. On 99% of the time, you're just getting slammed. Yeah. So I went through that whole journey. I was in Screen Actors Guild, had agents, had managers, had it all. And then all of a sudden I just got fired. I got fired from my manager, fired from my agent. I had an agent in New Mexico because a lot of shows were being filmed in New Mexico. Fired. I'm like, damn, all in 2 weeks. And I was like, is this really what I want to do? And I remember having a moment. I'm like, do I want to just entertain people or do I want to contribute in a bigger way? And I was like, I don't just want to like be cop number 2 on CSI. Right. Like that doesn't sound as like fulfilling. I was like going for Carl's Jr. commercials or like Verizon or a Killer's music video and like playing the fucking knife guy. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. And like, it was clear when I wasn't booking anything, even though I worked with some great actors from like Shawshank Redemption, the show Charm, Shameless, got to produce a film. I was still hollow and I was like, something's missing. And so
it's a hard life, man.
It's crazy.
It is a hard.
I mean, I have friends who like do it. Like,
I'm good friends with a couple guys who are still like what I would call like working actors. Yeah. Guys you would know if you may not know their name, but like, oh, like that guy, right? And yeah, one of them actually know him because his brother's a Secret Service agent. Okay, and so I knew his brother really well, and then he was on a couple projects that I worked on peripherally, and so we've stayed in touch over the years. And he's like, man, I would do anything else, but like they keep hiring me, so I'm going to keep doing it because it's the best job in the world if you can get it. Yeah. Did you ever think about doing any stage work?
Later, but I was more interested in the film and TV. Leaving LA too, it's like not as not as like if I was in New York. Right. Yeah. But I did love
on Law and Order.
Right. I did love the live aspect though of theater.
Theater's great.
Right.
But I don't know. I think I've never been an actor. Although for several years, if you Googled my name, it came up as Spencer Coursen, actor, known for Zero Dark 30, because I was at the end of a leash of a dog for 5 seconds. But it's a completely different thing. It's a completely different animal.
Completely different.
It's just in terms of projection and how like when you're on stage you have to embellish and everything has to be these big grand gestures. Right. And I'm talking to whereas when you're on TV it can be even more nuanced and subtle, and the camera does a lot of the work.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. So that ended, and I was like, all right, like.
But for 7 years, were you a working actor?
Not working. No.
Okay.
More poor actor. I was making headways.
Yeah.
Right? If I came in there and already had loved myself, I'd have a different career. I'd still be an actor. There's no doubt. Like, because I wouldn't be searching for it on the outside. It would have been more of a calling of like, this is what I truly love to do versus like I'm trying to figure out how to like love myself through this art form.
True or false? This is an interesting question. So I have some friends who are either who have been in the government space or the military space who are now like moving into the private sector, or who are already in the private sector and maybe looking for other jobs. But these are all guys who are at the 6-figure level, right? They're making, 150 to or higher.
Okay.
And so they're going on LinkedIn and they're looking at these jobs and they're like, man, I'm applying for all these jobs and, I'm not even getting callbacks. And I'm trying to explain to them, those LinkedIn, Indeed, those job board sites, they're really good for people who are looking for like first time or like middle management jobs where it's kind of, you've been somewhere for 3 years, you're looking for something else to kind of make a lateral transition, or when you get to a certain price point, they already know who they're hiring. They just need to put the listing out so that they don't violate any kind of like hiring practices. When you're going on auditions, do you feel that they already kind of know who they want to hire and they're just doing the auditions just to see if they can, oh, he's not good for this, but he might be good for that? Or do you really think it's a, we're not making a decision until we see everyone who's available kind of a thing?
I think the most part from my experience and hearing like other actors who have booked like major roles, like we're going to see everyone.
Okay.
Right. And then we're going to make a decision, because I've heard stories with a friend of mine who was the lead actor on Charm of like, he walked in and it's Aaron Spelling whose show it is. He's got like a 30-foot couch with everyone lined up, and my friend walks in for the audition and he doesn't even remember, Aaron doesn't remember him, but he's auditioned for him numerous times. And he's like, fuck this guy. Like, fuck him. Like, I can't believe this. And he just like, all in his mind was like, just like, fuck it. Like, I'm just going to do this audition and like, I don't even give a shit. And he landed it because of that. Right. Yeah. And so I think there's an aspect of like, just obviously like, I don't care what you think. Yeah. But are there times when they already have someone? I'm sure. I never got that far down the road where that was a thing.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because now that I think about it, like I remember hearing like Matt Damon maybe like telling a story when it was like that whole class of like the Matt Damons, the Afflecks, the Tobey Maguires, who was the guy that was in American History X?
Edward Norton.
Edward Norton. Yeah. They were all going up for one role. Right. And all of them were auditioning. It was like, that was going to be like the next big thing. Right. And then I think Edward Norton got it, and it kind of like put him on the map. Right. And everyone was like, oh man. Yeah. It's such an interesting, industry.
Right. It's completely.
Yeah. Anyway, so acting goes off the chopping block.
Yeah. Off the chopping block.
And then you're like, well, what am I going to do now?
Right.
Right.
And then
you're looking for something that can validate you a little bit more.
Yeah. Really like looking into me of like, hey, like it's time to like really look inward here and like kind of figure out, like so as the acting ended, I actually went back into clothing.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I started like basically a t-shirt brand.
Now, when you started a t-shirt brand, I have a t-shirt company. I have some friends who have some really good t-shirt companies. I basically just put Ronin6 on a t-shirt and sell it. How do you do yours? Like, I really like I talked to Khalil, right? Yeah. He's like, Khalil just gets obsessive about, no, it has to be this certain kind of fabric that is hand woven in the mountains of wherever. And it's got to be hand washed in maple. It's got to be drenched in maple syrup so that it gets this. And I'm just like, dude, you're a million levels ahead of me when it comes to this stuff. Yeah. What is when you get that fashion itch, what is it about your style that separates it from everyone else?
Sure. So my grandma taught me about fabric when I was young. Okay. So she just always taught me like, mijo, like when you buy bedding, when you buy clothes, you buy premium. It lasts longer. It's nice. When you sleep in it, it makes you feel different when you wear it. So she taught me about quality like from a really young age. Okay. So if we fast forward now of like with Strangers Only, like what separates the brand and a lot is the fabric. Like you could see like this fabric I'm wearing here is acetate.
Okay.
It's super different. It's really nice. It drapes beautifully. It feels really nice on the body. It's elegant looking. It's stylish. Like, so for me, like we have new t-shirts that came in from India. Like they're combed cotton. Like it feels like butter on your skin. So I start with that. Like
how it makes you feel.
What is the texture? What's the feeling?
What is the fabric feel
right.
like?
And how's that going to feel on the skin?
Okay.
Right. So when you put that on, how are you going to feel wearing like this? Is like nice.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, it starts with the fabric first and foremost. Like I know I'm gonna make t-shirt, but like we got to find real, like how are you going to separate yourself in a market full of everyone needs a t-shirt?
Right.
How are you going to make a really nice t-shirt?
Yeah.
Right.
And then are you looking to have your own like cut or style, or do you want strangers only in like a big?
Well, no, we're like a minimalistic, right? I call it like mid-luxury.
Okay.
Just like we're like, it's artistic fashion for like the creative, like for the, it's like, you know, the modern day gentleman clothing.
Okay. So it's like from a fabric to function kind of.
Yeah. It's like for someone who doesn't want to look like the typical, like, you know, guy who doesn't have styles, like the dad style.
Right.
Right. It's like, hey, this is like an elevated. Those guys that
all they do is just wear
where he's going to walk into a room and like, yo, he's dressed really well. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't have to say anything. Like, you just look good.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's shorts and a t-shirt, like this whole thing looks good.
Was strangers only was that in your head at that time?
Strangers only came about a conversation through a few of my buddies, and like basically I would share like, man, random, like people always just approach me like, hey man, I love your clothes. Where'd you get your clothes? So like this would occur my entire life.
Okay.
Of people just approaching me. And then it was the piece with the father in my, like, so this name Strangers Only came about.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really clever.
Yeah. And so that's how that name emerged, was through those two avenues of my own experience.
Okay.
And then I tested it out with like friends, and I gave them like 4 different names. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, Strangers Only.
Strangers Only.
That's a cool name.
It's a very cool name.
Yeah.
It's a very cool name.
Right.
So you're messing around with the clothing brand for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then
that doesn't work out.
Okay.
So I kind of just like.
How long did that last for?
I carried around these shirts and like with me for 9 years. I literally traveled around with them. This went everywhere I went, and this sat there.
And were you trying to get them into like stores, or were you selling them online?
At the time, it was like there was no Instagram yet when I started this, right? So
what year is this?
I'm 25 at this point, 26. This is like right when I stopped acting. I got back in. I was like, really like.
So we like 2010?
2000. Oh yeah, 2010, 2011, okay. Yeah. Right around there. Yep. Yeah. And so then I just went around and I was like, okay, well, this like isn't quite working yet. Like I got someone who's not really into it. And I was like, okay, we'll just have these shirts. And then I just like, I'm going to go back to school. Mm-hmm. So I just went back to basically, I was like, all right, I got to figure out how to like pay for school. It's expensive. Like there's no student loans for what I want to learn here.
Right.
And so like, I just started to basically work at a nightclub and pay my way through school.
And what did you want to go back to school for?
I just want to learn everything about I could with human behavior.
Okay.
I would want to learn all the ins and outs of like healing myself, of like how to like learning to love these different parts of me.
So did you want to be a psychologist?
At the time it was, I'm just going to go learn. And as I kind of learned and like more and more, I was like, okay, this is really helping me. Like,
but were you going for a master's, or were you just auditing classes?
I was just like, it's a private kind of institute education. So I was just like taking everything I could. And then I was just continuing to refine and study more and more and more.
Interesting. What was the institute?
The DeMartini Institute.
The DeMartini Institute. Tell me about that.
This is dedication to maximizing human performance and awareness.
It sounds a little woo. How woo is it?
It's not woo at all. It's deep psychology with the brain and how the brain is actually structured and works. It's like basically like my clients, like Curtis is like a therapist on crack. It's how one of my
could have used you earlier.
Of how one of my clients described it. Or another one's like, yo, I had a psychologist, but I just fired them just to work with you only now. Like it changed my life in such a way. I was like, this is what I'm here to do.
Do you think that and I've benefited from both the psychology, like the more structured approach, and then the asymmetric approach, if we'll call it. Do you think that I have always championed that there's a million modalities out there, right? And there's a million facilitators of those modalities. And if you can find the right modality and the right facilitator, and you as an individual are willing to do the work, great things can happen.
Absolutely.
But it's not like, oh, I'm going to find someone with a master's degree who's certified in CBT. I'm going to sit down with them for 12 weeks and they're going to be fine. It's not that fine. So do you think that, I mean, and I've heard this from other people who have gone from the psychologist to the life coach route too, is just that the approach is different. The modalities are more in line with who I am and how I like to do things. How do you, when you are working with your clients, like get to know them to a point where you know, because I would imagine that it's not because problems are like individuals where, you may be depressed, but the causes of your depression may be different. How do you know how to kind of tailor design your approach for your specific individual?
I mean, really understand their pain, right? Of like really what's the big pain that like we're really trying to solve here.
Right. Like what is the little thing that's causing the big thing?
Right. It's like, okay, we got this house, right? And it's a fixer upper. Like we don't know what we're going to find. So as you unpack, you find different things, but then you're really like, as I've been doing this for basically 10 years now, like you're unpacking like, oh, like there's a common theme here that's going on. Right.
Right.
Like, all right, cool. You don't love yourself. Like simple, but hard to solve.
But do they come in saying, I can't love myself or I don't love myself?
No, that's
or
never,
do they come in saying, I can't feel fulfilled?
I can't hold a relationship, or I'm stuck in like, my career's great, but like, why do I feel empty? Right. Or I'm making all this money, but it's not doing anything for me to feel any better about who I am. Right. Or I'm using all these drugs. I want to stop the drugs. Right. So it's always like, it's something else. But when it comes back to it, like that's the answer. But getting there and getting to that point takes a little time.
So it's almost like they know that they're doing things to mask something. They just don't know what it is.
Well, it's a strategy, right? Like, because they're running from something. And the greatest strategy you have was, oh, I'll use this to help me deal with it because I don't know how to deal with it.
Right.
Right.
But are they conscious of what the it is?
No.
Yeah. See, I say that because I didn't.
Right. You like Carl Jung says, until you bring the unconscious conscious, you'll call your life fate. Right, we have to bring the shadow conscious.
There's a quote, not mine. I'm a borrowed language guy, but it's something along the lines of, fate is for men who believe their failures as final. Destiny is for men who refuse to believe their fate as final.
That's beautiful. Exactly.
Or something along those lines. But yeah,
that's it.
Right.
So it's like, this has been your story, and now that's worked up until now, but now you want different results. So we have to shift the story, have to shift the mind.
Right. But how do you get to that? Is it, I'm assuming it's not like a checklist. Okay, I'm going to ask this question and this question. Maybe it is, but how, I guess for the lack of a better word, intuitive do you need to be to
pick up on it?
Well, because there's I'm sorry, no, you go.
No, there's a process, right? Most people are addicted to positive psychology.
Okay.
Well, that's one-sidedness. There's nothing that's one side.
Yeah.
Right? So the addiction to one side of success, to be seen as a success, makes it really hard to be seen as a failure because the pain's so much. But ultimately, we have two sides to ourselves. At times.
Hence the shadow work.
Right. Yeah. At times you're up, at times you're down, at times you're smiling, at times you're fucking sad. At times like, shit, today was a really hard day. So most people try to get rid of half themselves. But how are you ever going to love yourself when you're trying to get rid of half yourself? You can't.
Well, yeah. Also, like you need the bad days to make the good days more memorable.
But the addiction to the good days make the bad days worse. Yeah. Right. So it's people are stuck in the positive psychology, which is driving bipolar because they're trying to be one-sided. It's like in a relationship. If I expect my girlfriend to be up all the time and happy all the time, I'm fucked. She's going to be like, I don't feel seen by you. I don't feel heard by you. I don't feel safe by you because you can't even handle this side of me. That's the issue with clinical and positive psychology.
Well, isn't that funny? Because we almost do that in like the courtship of early days of a relationship, right? We only show the good stuff.
Right.
We only wear the nice clothes. We only go to the nice restaurants. We only show we're peacocking.
Right.
Right. And then it's like 3 months later, you're just like, I just want to fucking sit here in my underwear and watch the news.
Right. Yeah. And that's right. So that's, again, learning to accept those parts, accept those sides, making space for all of that. Because you expand your capacity as an individual, as a leader, and then you have empathy for others because you're not in the state of like, oh, well, you're straight like, making their feelings invalid, right?
Right.
And making them feel wrong versus like, gaslighting basically. And like, no, you have a capacity to feel and to understand, and you're making space for all the parts to coexist.
How much of that comes down to choice?
Well, I mean, you have to want to do it.
Right.
It comes down to like, do I want to dive into these parts of me? Most people wait till life is really fucking painful to do that.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
I waited till for me, it was adapt or die.
Right.
Quite literally.
Right.
And so I remember reading, I think it was David Brooks's book on The Second Mountain. He's like, yeah, it's either like a moment, a mission, or a mess.
Right.
It's like you're either, this isn't what I want to do anymore, or you're alerted to something else that you want to do even more, or something, you go through a divorce or a breakup or something, you go bankrupt, or there's some kind of a mess that that requires
time to reflect and look within. It's time to do some deep work.
What is a typical life cycle for like you with one of your clients? Is it 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years?
I've had clients been with years for now. Like, yeah, because the results they're getting, they're seeing it impact all the areas in their life.
That's a really good point, because I still like reach out to my guy, from time to time. But for was originally 12 weeks and then 16, then 22 weeks, it was like every week. Right. And then after that, it was like, I checked in maybe like 6 months later, and I checked in like when my dad died, because I hadn't allowed myself to like feel emotions for so long. And then all of a sudden I was just like over emotional that like dog food commercials were making me cry. Yeah. And then my dad died on top of it. And I was like, listen, I gotta be strong for my family, man. Like I can't be, I can't afford to have my personal life or my professional life that every time a Taylor Swift song comes on the radio, I start crying like a baby over like a breakup from 4th grade. Right. Okay. Like, what's going on here? Yeah. And he was like, dude, relax. It's like, it's kind of like when you're working out, you haven't used these muscles in a while. They're going to be a little sore and a little fatigued and a little raw. You're going to be okay. Yeah. Like, just feel the feelings, name them. Don't bottle the stuff. We don't start all over again. Yeah.
They need the proper expression to heal.
Right. But when someone wants to come work with you, what do you kind of frame the expectation as to, hey, this isn't, we're not going to talk for an hour and be good. You're going to have
I've structured it now in terms where it's like, hey, like, it's 6 month commitment. Yeah. It's a year commitment. Right. Like you want a result, right? I'm dedicated to getting you that result. Right. Here it is. Like, you want it? Cool. If not, like, I'm moving forward. Like, this is what I'm dedicated to, serving your result. Jump on the plane.
When in that, let's call it 6 months, just to make life easy. Is that once a week? Is that twice a week? Is that
the structures have changed? Like, I've had clients at times where like they've done I've had one who did 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Like, he had so much stuff he wanted to deal with, and he saw what was occurring as we were like each session just going deep and clearing out these baggage, just traumas from different people in his life. He's like, so he was doing it, I mean, literally 15 hours a week for 6 months. Right. And then it went to, okay, we'll do twice a week. Some clients now, twice a week. It just depends. Yeah. Like, they see the results and they're like, oh, well, if I put in more time, I'm going to just be able to work through more stuff. And then we'll work on other areas of my life and design my life and mission and my purpose and dive into that more.
Do you ever find that people, I'll use a personal training anecdote. Kelly put out this, we both know Kelly. I think Kelly's name has been dropped on every single podcast I've ever done.
Makes sense. She's your trainer.
She's my trainer. She's my life coach.
Right.
But she put out a video about something like, oh, you want to grow your glutes? Like, okay, well, then you need to be like in a calorie surplus. You need to lift heavy. You need to eat clean, train dirty. You need to do all of these things. And then some girls would, but I don't want to be in a calorie surplus. She's like, well, then you're not going to grow your glutes, right? It's like, I can tell you what steps you need to do to accomplish the goal that you're telling. If what winning looks like to you is growing your glutes, here are the things that are non-negotiables. You have to do these. If you don't want to do these, that's fine. But then don't tell me you want to grow your glutes. What would be a similar comparison to someone who wants to heal?
Sure. So let's just say it's a man and come to me, right?
Right.
And he's like emasculated, right? But he wants a relationship,
Right.
right? So it's like, okay, cool. We got to first heal your wounding with the male, and then heal your wounding with probably your mother, right? So we got to work on those two core aspects and really dive deep into your childhood and restructure how you viewed your childhood and really work through the trauma that came up, if it was abandonment, if it was smothering, right? Because the emasculation now has this guy who's not lacking boundaries, who doesn't have self-respect, self-validation, and now they're getting it from outside sources.
Their career,
money, fucking endless women. It's like, shit, I've been with, whatever amount, and like, that's not doing a trick. I thought I'd get the hottest girl. That's not helping. Right. And eventually like the relationship with the woman are like, I'm not really attracted to you because like you're needing my approval versus leading.
Yeah.
Right. So those are areas of like very specific roadmaps. So like X, Y, Z, boom, we're going to do this, that to get that result, to shift the frequency.
Is that a dissonance between what I think I want and what I need?
Well,
for instance, a guy who may look a lot like myself, comes up to you and says, "Hey, I want to be in a really great power partner dynamic relationship." And then you look at my track record of dating, and they're all like 25-year-old Instagram models.
Right.
So you're like, "Do you see the disconnect?"
Yeah.
Like, that's not this.
Right.
You say you want this.
Right.
But you keep
getting that.
Who was it? You? No. Someone said to me something along the lines of like, if you want to catch a shark, you don't go to a lake. Right. And so it's like when you say you want something, but you're going to the wrong, like you're shopping for the wrong thing, and you're shopping for the right thing in the wrong store.
Right. The reality is like, if let's just say like you never worked on that piece and you went and lived somewhere else, you do the same thing. It'd still be the same 25-year-old girls showing up with different skin tone. Right.
Yeah. So have you seen the Adam Sandler, like he's the tour guide in Italy thing?
Oh, is it on Netflix?
No, it's an old Saturday Night Live skit.
Okay.
But it's basically like, if you are depressed in New York and then you fly to Italy, you are still depressed.
Right.
Just in Italy.
Right.
We can take you to Lake Como.
Right.
We cannot make you feel comfortable in a bathing suit.
Right.
It's like,
it's that.
It's like,
right. So it's really shifting the inward frequency. It's dealing with the trauma,
frequency, I like that.
Dealing with the lack of validation, right? Everything that your mom or your dad didn't give you, like, okay, great. Now we got to teach you to give that to yourself.
Yeah.
So your partner's not dependent on giving that to you, because that's not sexy in a relationship when a woman's having to fucking, you're great looking, you're so good, you're so amazing. They don't want to do that.
Right.
That's unattractive.
No.
And then you're dependent on her to get that. So if she's not giving it to you, all of a sudden, well, what happened to my self-worth? Well, you don't even own it. She owns it.
Funny you say that. So I just read an article maybe yesterday, the day before, that was basically saying that like the more attractive you are, the less often you are told how good looking you are.
Yeah.
Versus the less attractive you are, the more you're told it because you need that validation. Whereas if you're just good looking, you're good looking.
Right. There's an ownership.
Look around, right. Exactly.
But a lot of times there's not an ownership. It's a missing, it's a void, it's an emptiness. Right. So it's constantly, I need you to fill my cup up with water. And then it gets drowned, and I need, now I need this person's to fill me up because that's how I feel good about myself. Right. So it's a science, it's an art of turning it inward, right? Learning to reparent ourselves, give everything we wanted that we didn't get, and give that to ourselves.
Do you find that people, I'll use I statements.
Yeah.
For me, when that was presented to me, it was kind of presented in an, oh shit, how did I not see that? It was right there in front of me the whole time.
Yeah.
Versus I don't want to look at, what's in the box, don't look in the box. Do you find that there's people who say they want to heal, but they're afraid to look inward dynamic?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you kind of, for the guy who's out there right now who's going, hey, I really want to get help.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm too effed up to be helped.
Yeah.
What do you say to that person?
Yeah, brother. First off, I get it. I get those feelings, that pain of like being that low where you're like wanting to like maybe even take your life. You're having suicidal thoughts. Like fucking totally get there. I've been there myself where I was like, damn, do I ever want to be here? Right? But just know the further down and out you've been, the further up and out you can go. Right?
Yeah.
Because your pain holds great value, great gems for your life. And if you could just say, okay, I'm willing to let this guy lead me and take me, like you're going to take that pain and it's going to be your greatest gift. And you could just completely just take off with your life, because the truth is, like, and this is like a little quote I came up with, where the corpse of your shadow lies, there your flowers blossom. Right. So it's like, it's healing that trauma. And like how, like for me, my whole life purpose is based on not knowing my own identity. Like, do I want to give that up? Do I want to give up the fact that like the girl didn't pick me in 3rd grade and I learned to use clothes to get attention and now I design clothes and have that as like a side business? I don't want to give that up. So it was like really taking this pain of like this little boy who like just wanted to feel attractive.
Right.
Wanted attention from his mom, and she was busy raising 2 other boys and working. Wanted to look good for the girl, like, and then I was like, great, now I'm in human behavior and I help men like regulate themselves and learn how to love themselves and not be dependent on that, so they could fucking show up in their business as leaders, but also have a kick-ass relationship.
Yeah.
And then I get to design clothes too that make fucking you feel amazing when you wear them. Like, so yeah, that pain, it sucks and it's terrible and I feel it, but like it holds so much value if you're willing to have the courage to face it.
The courage of the conviction is a big part of that.
And finding someone who could truly lead you through it, right?
Yeah. And not kind of like talking about what we were talking about like in the very beginning, like not taking people at like, you have to sometimes allow people the opportunity to show you who they are.
Right.
I remember when I first sat down with my guy, I called my sister like right after, and I was like, ain't gonna work. Like, he hasn't read this book. He hasn't read this book. He hasn't read this book. All he did was like just blow sunshine up my ass the whole time. Oh, you did this and no, you did that. And that's so cool. And blah, 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 blah. And I'm not someone who, even if something went really well, right? I don't care about the praise. Tell me how I can make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Give me the constructive criticism. I want to improve. Constant, never-ending improvement. Like good, better, best, never let them rest, that whole thing. But my sister goes to me. She's like, hey, you know how like you sometimes like go to your clients and you'll say like, hey, if they were just honest about like the underlying concern, like they could have fixed this problem themselves. And these are people who are like, tier 1 talents. They're like running corporations and big businesses and things like that. Like, but they still need Spencer's help to, they're like, he's you, like you need him. Right. Because you can't see the problem that's right in front of your face.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I go in, for my next session and I can't get a peep out of this guy. Right. He's just like, And so now I'm just filling up that silence with just my own, noise, bravado. Yeah. And it gets to the end, he goes, so I've heard you say like 5 or 6 times that like if your clients were just honest about their underlying condition, that they could solve their own problems. I go, yeah. He's like, so when are you going to stop talking about how you wish you felt and start telling me how you actually feel? Oof. And I went, he's like, I'll see you next week. I was like, okay. My sister calls, how'd it go? I was like, fuck you. I know you told him.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can't see it when you're in it.
The fish can't see the water they're swimming in.
No.
Right?
You can't.
You just can't. It's not inattentional blindness. It's just it's atmospheric or environmental. You just can't see. Yeah. The fish can't see the water they're swimming in. It's just, it's not like the bird flying in the sky goes, man, there wasn't this wind resistance. I'd be so much faster. Right. Like they don't know.
They don't know
the difference.
Yeah.
But you touched on your biological father again.
Yeah.
Where does that sit with you now? Do you have a desire to reach out? Have you tried to reach out?
So my mom tried to reach out because she had obviously the relationship and she found him on like Facebook, found one of the brothers, reached out, chatted. He was a bit like, no, he's mine because how could he be my brother's? And she had this guilt just run over her where she couldn't even share that. And then I got the number and like, hey, so like I reached out and it was through text. And I was like, cool, like we'll set up a chat. And it's like, hey, we'll be in touch. Like we're real accountable guys. We'll be in touch. And the moment I heard that, I was like, I'm never going to hear from these guys again.
Yeah.
And never heard from them. So for me,
well, we have them here today. We're gonna. No, I'm joking.
This is a full.
We're going full Maury Povich.
Right. So for me, I'm like, I'm good with that. Like,
yeah.
And again, if I wouldn't have done the amount of work I've done,
well, I was just gonna say, do you maybe feel like that? Just having that piece of that jigsaw puzzle, and now having that completion,
it's good.
Everything else,
like I'm here. Yeah. I'm going to make the most out of my life. I have two amazing fathers who both stepped in, like the one who raised me, and then my brother's dad, who I know longer than them because I'm older than my brothers, who still is like my father, even though he's not married to my mom. But he's still like my dad.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, I was like, cool, I've got two dads.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? There are certain things that are desirable difficulties.
Right.
Like my parents got divorced when I was like 6 years old, but my mom was from this, Irish Catholic family. She had like, 10 brothers and sisters. So I had like 9 uncles, or not, but like 5 or 6 uncles and a grandfather so I got a little bit of all of them.
Right.
That kind of, and then when my stepdad came in the picture, he kind of like took all those pieces and like molded it in what it meant to be a man.
Right.
So does it suck that I had like a non-traditional like familial upbringing? Yeah. But one of the benefits was I got this whole other dynamic that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Right. Did you feel that was something similar for you? Like when you look back, how do you kind of?
I look back now, because now I see the lessons like one my dad's taught me. Like there's a moment where I think I was like probably 13 years old, maybe 12, and we lived just outside of downtown LA, and he's driving his work van. It's him and my stepmom and me, and I'm sitting on the milk crate, like just behind the seats, literally like a milk crate. And he's like, all right, we're going to go to downtown LA today. We're going to go eat at the pantry. And he takes me to Skid Row, and he's like, son, if you do nothing with your life,
this is where you're
going to end up. And then after he drove me through the Hollywood Hills, it says, if you decide to do something with your life, all this is yours. You could get this. And so he taught me these lessons. I look back and like these little lessons that I like look back at now. I was like, oh wow, like he was just teaching me really simple things throughout the way, right? Of how he was. And like, I mean, the fact that I wasn't his kid, but he literally took my mom to like almost to court to keep me, even though like I wasn't a biological son. Right. He just took over the role. He's like, he told me when I had this conversation with him, I was like, hey, there's something I have to tell you. Finally, after 2 months, I was like, I'm going to just have a conversation with my dad here. Like, how do you tell your dad he's not your dad? Yeah. It's a weird conversation to have.
For you to have.
For me, right? And then he's
how old were you at this point?
35.
Yeah.
And he's like, Curtis, I've known all along. He's like, I stuck around to make sure you had a great shot at life because I didn't think if I left you with your mom, that would happen. Right. And I was like, oh, I just bursted into tears.
Yeah. That's fucking love.
Right. And I was like, wow.
Right. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. Yeah. Dude, I could sit here and talk to you all day. I end every podcast by asking my guest 5 questions.
Sure.
So I'm going to ask you your 5 right now.
Great.
When you were a kid,
yeah,
what is something that you could do that you could get lost in?
Clothes. Okay. Yeah.
Like shopping for clothes?
Yeah, shopping for clothes. Just shopping for clothes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where would that just like kind of just engulf you? Or would your mind
would
just
like
kind of
take
like
me to the mall and like we'd go to the surf shops, we'd go to Nordstrom, and now I could say my clothes are in Nordstrom.
Are they?
Yeah.
Dude, that's really cool.
Yeah.
We'll put all the links and all that stuff in the show notes after we're done. Aliens, fact or fiction?
I'm going to say fiction.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No chance that there's a little green man.
I mean, I'm not going to say there's not a chance, but if like just looking back through like studying like philosophy and history, like where like I'm not seeing any like great minds discuss, like, I don't know. I haven't seen anything. I'm not an avid researcher on it, but
I'm not either.
Yeah.
I'm on the fence. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I could be like, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if there's like a whole underground civilization.
Sure.
And it wouldn't surprise me if like everything is just DARPA.
Right.
It's probably DARPA.
Yeah.
Time machine. You can only go back you can't change anything. You can't kill Hitler. You can't,
Sure.
save Amelia Earhart.
Okay.
But you can spend as much time and you can go anywhere, spend it, talk, interview, have dinner with, observe, and then come back. Nothing's going to change other than your insight and understanding and memory.
Okay.
Where are you going?
That's a great question. First, wow, what a question.
Mm-hmm.
Where would I go? Who would I love to connect with? I think I would like to go back and connect with Marcus Aurelius and really like this.
Ooh, you're going stoic.
Yeah, I like to go stoic here and just like learn from him of like what he did as like a man and a leader, like because how he was raised and like came into this and like just led his men.
His childhood was fascinating, right? He was he was like kind of mentored by
a philosopher,
but who, and then he just kind of like took the best of both worlds and just rose up into the, his writings are still,
they're amazing,
resonant.
They're like timeless writings. Yeah. So I think I would love to just like sit with that and just be mentored and learn and that's
a really good answer. No one's given that one before. I like that a lot. When did you get into stoicism? Not your fourth question, but just
probably like early 30s.
Yeah. That was like my introduction to like a lot of like the great philosophy, like Sun Tzu and Marcus Aurelius. And so I like dove it, but like I've been diving back into stoicism lately. It's
There's this timeless stuff.
It is. Question number 4. What do you think is going on with, quote, masculinity today? And is what's going on a good thing or a bad thing?
I think because of the rise of like feminism in the sense of like women empowerment, which is amazing, right? I think there's been such a force driving behind it that the dynamics, the polarities have shifted in the sense of like having a relationship of what the men really want and what the women really want. Like, and it's skewed. And I think there's so much demasculation for a man to like show up, and these walls that have been like built up of like, hey, we're equals, which I 100% stand for, but that doesn't create a really sexy relationship in the sense of like the man being able to lead and the woman feel cherished and seen and not have to like, they want to turn their minds off. They don't want to be in a masculine all day, especially if they're boss babes. Like I work with boss babes. Yeah. They have a really hard time finding men because they're in their masculine all the time and they can't find a masculine man to lead them into their feminine. So I think we're at a really pivotal time here where things, if like men aren't doing like their necessary work in order to tap back into their masculine and lead. And like the scariest thing for a man is to be vulnerable, to share your desires, needs, and wants, because of rejection, of our own wounding from the past, right? And so to me, like, that's a polarity as you've seen as like the power structure shifting, but with that comes the pain of relationship structure. Yeah.
I have found that, because I think you're exactly right. Like, I think women who are in their feminine would rather watch their man like fall off his horse than like talk about his feelings.
Yeah.
But they want a man who has an outlet to talk about his feelings.
Yeah, not to them.
It shouldn't be them.
No, it should not be them.
Right, it should not be them.
No.
Which is why I think when you see like soldiers who have like a team dynamic, or athletes who have a locker room dynamic, or firemen who have like a house dynamic, or cops who have a precinct dynamic, they are able to share those vulnerabilities and concerns and frustrations and what have you with like-minded men of a certain age with similar experience.
Exactly.
Talk it out there so that you can go home and
lead
and be the strong masculine frame that allows for that feminine to flourish.
Exactly.
But if you bring that masculine energy into your woman, recipe for disaster.
Absolutely, because the fucking sex drive is going to go brrr.
You become another kid.
Yeah. You should be your mother. Yeah, that's it.
Bad idea.
So I think that's the biggest thing.
No, I think you're exactly right. Yeah. Because I've been asked lately to, would I be interested in doing like, like mentorship for like young boys and athletes to kind of like kind of show a roadmap for healthy masculine,
right?
For the healthy masculine.
Yeah, that's the thing. Healthy masculine,
right? Yeah. Well, yeah, we can go into the whole like talk. That's
that
another,
could be a whole nother show.
Story. Last question. I'll get you out of here on this. They often say that if we saw ourselves out in the wild, that we wouldn't recognize ourselves. How do you want to occur to other people?
It's another great question. I mean, I had a moment earlier where I was on a call and like before the person showed up and I was just me, and a moment of seeing myself and I started to cry. I was like, I haven't seen like this reflection before. So when I saw that, for me, I think just showing up as someone who could lead, who leads others, who leads himself and lives by exemplification. Like to me, that's the greatest way of I could show up and say, I'm going to walk the talk. I'm going to do it and lead it. And if you like it, jump on board. And so for me to be seen that way, it's like, this guy just walks, he walks his talk.
Love it.
Yeah.
Curtis, if people want to learn more, what's the best place for them to go?
Yeah,
Instagram, LinkedIn, website?
Instagram is at the Curtis Dean.
Okay.
Website is bydean.co. That's all my coaching. And then strangersonly.co is the clothing brand.
We'll put it all in the show notes.
Awesome.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
This is great. Cheers.